Hey everyone, my name is Nick. I am the creator and lead designer of a currently unreleased sci-fi meets fantasy TTRPG entitled Antique Worlds. This is a GM's retrospective. It's where I go through the story of my very first campaign I ever ran as a newbie GM and really talk about the mistakes I made and what I could do better and how I could do better. I just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying this journey with me so far, please recommend this to a friend. It goes a long way and I appreciate the help. Now, we dive into session 7. So let's begin, shall we? So session 6 had ended with them locking themselves in a little cave inside this underground passageways. They come out of it and they continue to explore the cave. There are various monsters that have to be fought, and every time they defeated a monster, there was some sort of treasure chest that they could open. And I had basically designed either a weapon or an item for each one. And for like example, Sloan got a new short sword. Warden got a new staff, and then like there was a few like then there were like items like a pendant that boosted some of your stats, your like damage stats and everything like that. The interesting thing though was I didn't tell anyone who each item was for. I designed each item for someone specifically in mind, but it's just like they open the chest and like, oh, here's a new staff. And since Warden is the only one who uses a staff, to me, the party should have been able to put two and two together and then realize the staff would be for Warden. Now, for the most part, that went really well until we had one of the characters keep two items, which meant one character did not get an item. And I let it play out in role play to let them kind of squabble amongst themselves. Like it resulted in one of that player character being slightly disliked because it was Charlie. Charlie was the one who kept two items instead of everyone each getting one. So I can't remember who the player that went without was. I think it was either Tama or Ox. So I just let roleplay take care of that. And it wasn't never an issue. But it did make me change how I do hand out, treasure and stuff like that, where so now I don't give that opportunity to where there's a chance to steal from another player or one player goes without why someone gets two. Now what I just do is, okay, so we're in a dungeon in this room, y'all are searching and then bam, so and so you find this and then you're in this room and bam, so and so you find this. I do that just so I can avoid getting a like text after the session and be like, "Hey, that's kind of annoying that they kept that," you know. So I just kind of just basically circumvent that entire situation. Thankfully, at this time, no one was really upset. Everyone was cool about it. But how do you do handing out treasure? Do you let the party kind of decide who it's for or anything like that? Because the other thing is like I was talking to one of the players and he was saying it does make for good role play as to, you know, this player was now shortchanged. Are they going to role play it out? But it's also, I get that. And I think that can work at certain tables, but it won't work at all tables. So it's just one of those things where it's like, do you want to have that as part of your game? I decided no, I don't. But let me know what you think. How do you hand out treasures? Do you just give it to the player it's designed for, or do you let them kind of just squabble amongst themselves and figure it out as to who gets what? So after they all, except for one player, get their new toys, there's another brief combat. Like it was nothing crazy, but it was just a way for them to get to play with their new toys and, fill them out and flush it out and everything like that. Combat goes well. They defeat it pretty easily. So as they continue deeper and deeper into these caves and tunnels into the mountainside, they eventually come to this giant not stone, sorry. They come to this giant metal door. And it's massive. It's like dozens and dozens and dozens of feet tall. It's huge. And they're trying to figure out how to get past it. And after a few moments, they realize that this door is sentient as it starts to talk to them. And his name is Doornauld. Basically, they want to know why he is a door, and he basically explains like who he was beforehand. I think he was just like a farmer or something like that. But this is the result of the fracture. The fracture turned him into this. And he tells them that the only way for them to get through is that he needs them to sacrifice something of theirs. If they make a sacrifice, he'll let them all through. So they want to know why he's demanding that. And he explains to them, like, this is how he can do more to help stop the fracture, that he's about to let them into a very special place. And no, not just everyone can go in there. You have to be a person who's willing to make a sacrifice. So all the players, they argue over who should have to do what, yada yada. They're like, hey, I found this gun or this sword I picked off. I think one of them tried, they had taken one of the bandits' weapons that they had defeated a couple sessions ago, and they tried to use that as their sacrifice. And, you know, Arnold is this sentient door whose one job it is to not let anyone who's not willing to make a sacrifice in. So he's like, no, it has to be something genuinely special that you're willing to sacrifice. It's like 10 or 15 minutes of everyone kind of going back and forth. We had a handful of people who were like, they're the things that I have that are special to me, I'm not willing to sacrifice. So y'all have to figure this out. Basically, is how it wasn't said that direct, but basically that's how it was said. And then eventually, Sloan just took the sword of Anji and she brought it to Darnold. Darnold had a face and a mouth, like a giant face and a giant mouth, and she puts the sword in his mouth and he takes it, and then the door opens and lets them in. So something I never really touched on so far is that throughout the last 6 sessions, anytime Anji got brought up, Sloan mentioned how Anji was someone that was important to her. Like, he basically helped raise her in a sense. He's the one who kind of trained her to how to use a blade. He was very much a father figure to her. So having his sword, oh, I don't think I said that in the last, and when they met Devar. Devar mentioned to the group that because Anji was so important to Sloan, that Sloan should keep his sword. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I'm telling you now. So it had been brought up the last 6 sessions that Anji was important to Sloan. He was like a father figure, and Sloan took that sword and sacrificed it in order to get into the next room. Like, to me, I was like, when I designed Darnold, I was not expecting like that level of sacrifice, but I also wasn't going to accept a weapon you found on a bandit a couple days ago. So, I was like, that was an awesome bit of like character sacrifice and character progression for Sloan, because Sloan up to this point has been this bratty little silver spoon in mouth, like, daddy's money can solve everything for me. And the fact that she was willing to make that sacrifice was an awesome bit of character growth for her. So, like, props to that. Now they go in and they are in this torch lit little cave. And the first thing they see is on the side of this big cave wall is there's this massive hand painted mural. This mural is depicting this giant battle, this war scene. And there's a bunch, like, on the ground, what would be the the mural's ground is a bunch of like armored soldiers. Essentially, they would be like knights or samurais, anything like that, very armored soldiers. And they're engaging in battle with these people that are coming from the sky, and they're basically coming out of the fracture. They're flying down, and they're just drawn as these like shadowy figures. And they're battling with these shadowy figures. And it's just this whole giant mural depicting that. After they see the mural, this hunched over, like, old decrepit man whose face is completely scarred up, he kind of just like, you know, you can hear his joints creaking against each other, clambers up to them and asks them who they are. And they ask who he is. His name is Grovel, and he is the keeper of the emeralds. So now this is where those precious stones are found, because they see at the very end of this cave there is a emerald, like a circle in the wall made of emeralds, and then in the circle is this like Vanta black screen. Essentially, it's not even a screen, but it's like these precious stones, these emeralds are encasing this Vanta black screen or rock or whatever you want to say. So he's the keeper of this room. His sacrifice to stop the fracture in Teolia is that he is kind of like the final defense to who can interact with this emerald circle. He allows each of them to go up to this emerald circle and look into it. And everyone who looks into it has this vision. What each person had as a vision was as follows. What Tama saw was he okay, let me back up a little. They ask about the mural as well. If it was a picture depicting the fracture event, and he says yes, but not of our planet. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So now they go up to the emeralds to have their vision, and Tama is first. He sees the planet. It's like he's in space looking at the planet, and there's all these dark, billowing tendrils that are coming out from different parts of the planet. And he realizes that these are like digging into the core and ripping out everything inside. So Parallax is next, and what he sees is the crime lord that he serves is bowing down to Teolia in a form that the group has never seen Teolia in before. And it's like Teolia in this form is like he looks like one of those shadow creatures from the mural, but he's almost like fading in and out of existence. Like his actual body is not stationed in that dimension, and he's like flickering in and out. But he's transferring power to Parallax's master. Then Tara goes next, and what she sees is a woman in her early 30s who looks just like Tara, but she realizes it's Jade, which is the name of her sister. And her sister is wearing this uniform that shows that she is a high ranking soldier in Nakoa's personal battalion. She has a robotic arm, and then so she turns into Iker, and Arluck is the only place that has Iker fields where you can cultivate it, and she drains into one of those fields, and then that field drains itself completely dry. So that's why I was trying to make sure they knew where Nakoa was, because now it's confirmed that Jade is connected to Nakoa. Then Charlie was next. So Charlie sees a woman wearing this like heavy cloak and hood. She's covering her face and everything like that. She's very regal and authoritative, and she's being chased through the wastelands of Kalsuvia. And she comes across this old man who had built this really high tech shelter. And then she gives the baby that she was holding. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. She was holding onto a newborn baby. And she gives that newborn baby to this old man. And then she continues to run away and leads those that are chasing her away from the old man. Then there's Oxalis. So he sees the mouth of a cave, and he can tell that this cave is made from a granite that's native only to Nemus. And smoky tendril that's exactly the same as what Tama had seen in his is rushing out of this cave. And from deep into the cave, he can hear his brother Tenarok crying for help. And as he enters this cave, he follows it to what he believes is the planet's core. And smoke continues billows out of the core as he hears his brother asking for help. Then there's Warden. So Warden sees this extremely fancy room, and like in the center of this room, there's this metallic, like liquid metal desk. And then sitting at this desk is Nyx, but she hasn't aged at all. She's still a young woman, and she's working. There's this like big whiteboard behind her, and she's working on this like super complex mathematical equation. And then a child walks into the room, and the child's carrying this plate with food and drinks. He puts it on the table in front of her, and you could see that this child is handcuffed, and you could tell he's a slave. And then she motions for the child to leave, and then the kid leaves. And then the last one we see is Sloan. Now, all Sloan sees is darkness. And then she realizes like this darkness is living, it's alive, it's breathing. And then she has this really intense feeling of both love and then hate. And then both those feelings dissolve away into just numbness. And that was what each of them saw. Each of them has a different meaning. Some connect to backstory, some push the story forward, but they all basically pass out from that experience. And then when they wake up, they are outside of the mountain on the opposite side of the mountain where they went in. And they kind of all come to and they're like, "What was that? That was wild. That was like a crazy bad trip. What happened?" Everyone kind of tells each other what they saw. They kind of have a like, "What does that mean? Who could that be? What's going on?" And everyone's like, "I don't know what any of this is." And then to finish the session, this horribly experimented on like crow comes flying towards them and lands on Terra. And this crow is like it's half alive, it's half robotic, it's just a mess. It's meant to be it's all disfigured. It's meant to be not scary as in like boo, you're scary, but like who would do this to an animal? And tied to its robotic leg is a letter. And they read the letter and it's basically a threat. And whoever wrote this letter is basically telling them like, "Hey, you took something of mine, so you're going to pay for it with blood." So that was the end of the session. It ends with a threat. Someone is going to try and kill them for something they did, and they don't know who it is or what they did. Now, like I said, the big thing I learned this session is, hey, be careful how you give out new goodies, new items and weapons. Like I said, sound off in the comments. Tell me how you hand out weapons and items. Do you just hand it to the player that you made it for, or do you let the party kind of fight about who gets it and why? But yeah, let me know. Give me some advice. Maybe I can learn something from that. But again, thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying this journey, please, please, please share this with someone, get them involved, and really help this grow. And then we'll continue the story and we'll continue with what I learned being a dumb GM. But that's it for now. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.